Hello YouTube. I've been telling you very unusual and interesting bits of information about Russia and the paranormal phenomena that's embedded in its history. But it's time to tell you something that took place after the Russian Civil War. It's very interesting, but few people actually know about this in the West. It has to do with the Russia's Red Revolution and the occult. When the Civil War ended, the Bolsheviks assumed control over most of the former Tsarist empire. The victory was assured by terror unleashed through the use of the so-called shield and sword, or the secret police, well known in the West as the KGB. High intrigue, espionage, and research of the paranormal to be used for the aims of the dictatorship of the proletariat actually took place in the Soviet Russia early on. We knew little about this until the disintegration of the USSR in 1991. Almost no information was available. And after that, some, but of course by no means all of the files have been released. It was in May of 1921 that the Cheka, this is the abbreviation of the All-Russian Extraordinary Commission for Combating Counter-Revolution and Sabotage, also referred to as the Cheka, the forerunner of the KGB. This is when it was formed, and a special department specializing in technological activities. Its official name was 8th Special Department of the Cheka. And I want to talk about Gleb Bokii now, because he was the key person in our presentation. Gleb Ivanovich Bokii was born in Tiflis, which is known as Tbilisi in the country of Georgia today. This man, who later became the head of the sinister special department of the GPU, forerunner of the KGB, was acquainted with many researchers of the paranormal phenomenon. He was also a veteran Bolshevik revolutionary, born to a family of Russian nobles. His genealogy traces back to the days of Tsar Ivan the Terrible. Some sources indicate that he was a Ukrainian. Now, Bokii was first arrested at the age of 14, when he was fighting the Tsar's police. He was arrested 12 times until the fall of the Romanov Empire. Yet Bokii also found time to be a student, because Tsarist Russia did not liquidate its enemies, or those it assumed to be enemies, unlike the Bolshevik regime that Bokii helped bring in. Later he became the leader of the Petrograd, or St. Petersburg, VCK. It was later renamed to OGPU, but it's all the same thing, it's KGB. Bokii operated undercover in the German-occupied Belarus, and afterward he commanded the Cheka troops in Turkmenistan. In that country, according to an early KGB defector, Agabekov, who was most likely killed by his former colleagues in 1937, Bokii proved to be a sinister person, prone to drinking human blood and eating raw flesh of canines to improve his appetite. Yet Bokii was well organized and had tremendous influence in the Central Committee of the Communist Party. Agabekov was not too flattering in his description of the other KGB leaders. Most of them, according to him, who knew them well, were sadistic, were drunks, adventurers, and murderers. The only exception was Moisei Treliser, who later interfered with Bokii's plans to go to Tibet. Georgy Agabekov's memoirs were published in the West in 1930, and later in Russia, but only in 1996. See, there are conflicting descriptions of Gleb Bokii. Some people have been kinder when describing this man. He suffered from tuberculosis and was a workaholic. His special department was responsible directly to the Central Committee of the Soviet Communist Party and was quite independent. And this also cost Bokii his life, or maybe was one of the reasons. Now, Bokii's special department was responsible for the safeguarding top secrets of the Soviet state. His people checked offices of high officials, made sure that the safes were impenetrable, and installed secret alarms. There were quite experienced and seasoned detectives and technical experts in Bokii's department. Besides ensuring protection for the dictatorship of the proletariat, Bokii's people worked with ciphers and codes. Different secret ciphers were developed for Soviet diplomats, the secret police, and armed forces. His experts were able to break almost any code. Their other responsibility was eavesdropping and bugging of various communications inside Soviet Russia. Bokii's team had such enormous success in this area of their work that the West country was shaping to become a society much like the one described in 1984 by George Orwell. Stalin knew how to use this all-powerful secret police apparatus for his means. And finally, the special department was in charge of the occult project in the Soviet Russia. There was a part of Gleb Bokii's life that even the KGB did not find out until the later years. And it all was interconnected. Now we need to speak about Tibet. Tibet has long attracted attention of the Russian military. Secret missions had been sent there before the Soviet era. Bokii's colleagues were interested in all areas of the paranormal. Bokii was recommended to a special Martinist Lodge in 1909. It was a secret order of the Society of the Rosicrucians in St. Petersburg. Even as a student of the Geological Institute, Bokii attended occultist seances. Revolutionaries, staff officers, aristocrats, and con men observed mediums at work. Those who belonged to the lodge included Nicholas Rerich, or Nikolai Rerich, the famous Russian painter, author, researcher, guest of Dalai Lama, and philosopher. Bokii was very much interested in the paranormal and became a Mason long before the Red Revolution. One of those who approved Gleb Bokii's initiation to the Martinist Lodge was Barchenko, a biologist, occultist, and author of mystic novels. Telepathy was his special interest. In 1918, Barchenko was paid a visit by two KGB officers. One of them was Yakov Blumkin, a terrorist, martial arts expert, adventurer, spy, and a person whose life was steeped in intrigues and service to his cause, the Bolshevik Party and the Communist Revolution. Barchenko became a friend of the KGB. It is quite possible that the Bolshevik professor of the occult was actually in Paris in January of 1920, when the leader of the anti-communist military émigré organization, General Pavel Kutepov, disappeared without a trace. A man was seen at the Eiffel Tower on the 26th of January of 1930. According to a respected Russian émigré, Barchenko protected the OGPU, or KGB, kidnapping operation from French psychics. And now let's look at the Kola Peninsula. And trust me, we know very little about Barchenko, even with some of the information that you can obtain in modern Russia. But we'll get to it. In 1921, Barchenko took part in a secret expedition to the Kola Peninsula in northern Russia. There have been UFO sightings for centuries in the remote Russian area. Most of the research that took place there has been classified by Soviet secret police since the 1920s. This includes the mysterious Arctic hysteria, UFO sightings, and other phenomena we almost know nothing about. From the few files that have been released by heirs of the former KGB, we find out that in December of 1924, Barchenko met with the top KGB people and shocked them with his reports. I will tell you about the Lake of the Mountain Spirits, but I will not tell you all of the information or coordinates, and there is a special reason to it. The Kola Peninsula occupies the rim of the northern western Russia. Major part of the peninsula is located above the polar circle. It lies between the two seas, the White Sea in the south and the Barents Sea in the north. Here a number of anthropological, climate-related, natural and mystical enigmas coexist side by side. The mysterious and sacred Seydozero Lake is located in the center of the Lovozero Tundra. That's enough. It is connected with the Lovozero by a ferocious river, and the area around the lake is the center of many anomalies. Native Saami tribes have been living in this area for thousands of years. Here's where they worship their gods. According to their legends, a great chum, which is a tent made of skins or bark, was placed there, and presents from all the Saami nomad camps were brought there. The presents were quite valuable and included gold nuggets. During the invasion led by a Norwegian konung named Hakon, the old chum was destroyed and burned down. The shamans were able to hide the treasures collected through the ages in the deep waters of the sacred lake. There are rumors even nowadays about strange rituals performed by shamans in the vicinity of the lake. The lake's beauty is breathtaking. Tabletop-like summits of the low mountains with precipices surround Seydozero. Seyd, the sacred rock of Saami, is said to contain spirits and souls of the deceased shamans. Such Seyds were believed to possess magical powers, were worshipped, and sacrifices were performed in front of them. They were also used for fortune-telling purposes. It was not the rock that actually possessed magic powers, but the spirit who lived inside. If a Seyd was not worshipped sufficiently, the spirit inside would leave it, and the rock became an empty vessel. The largest Seyd in the Kola Peninsula is the Flying Rock, Saami, when they sailed past the Kuiva Seyd, they were afraid to make loud noises or cuss, because the old men, as they called Kuiva, might overhear them. They would not soil the waters of the sacred lake, so the old men would not take the fish away. They would never use a grimy cauldron for cooking to bring the water from the lake. They would fetch the water in a clean pail and then pour it into the cauldron. There is thunder near the lake. The Saami mythology has it that once there stood 3 sorceresses, a mother and her daughters, who were turned to stone. Some Russian researchers claim that there are 30 Seyds in the vicinity of the lake. Some Seyds are located on islands in the lake. In the winter time, the Saami or Lopari leave the lake for another settlement in Lovozero. There is an isthmus between the two lakes. Over it is a constant clearing of blue sky. Hurricane-like winds blow from Seydozero Hollow. The surrounding mountains do not protect the lake from the winds. Rain and clouds are frequent guests of the lake. Huge waves sometimes make the sailing on the lake virtually impossible. It is a very hard task to get to the lake, either by water or by land. And that's good. That's great. The lake is surrounded by thick, almost impenetrable taiga, or the dense forest. It separates the lake from the mountains. There are trails in the taiga along the northern shore of the lakes. The trees here are the tallest in the Kola Peninsula, and one can find black currants in the taiga and wild grapes in the foothills. But it's also very easy to get lost if you don't know the trails. The climb to the top of the Ninchurg mountain is both difficult and fascinating. The higher one climbs, the more beautiful the mysterious lake lying below becomes. Strange signs are found on the vertical sides of the steps, carved into rocks. Some are very complex, incomprehensible, and eerie. just like the rocky monuments made of stacked up stones placed on the way to the top of the mountain, at an equal distance from each other. This truly is an enigmatic place, mysterious place. There are geometrically correct gigantic plates, huge rocks bored through by some unknown and sizable drill, underground tunnels and strange wells. There are 7 pillars, one right next to the other, like a wall. Who built the tunnel? Was it built by Stalin's slaves looking for uranium here? This was one explanation given by Soviet scientists who arrived in the area to find explanation for its many puzzles and to help the local authorities discover the reason behind the disappearance of tourists and others. And this is why I don't want to give all the information, and I caution people to stay away, because there have been too many disappearances. And still, those who looked for the answers could not explain the many mysteries of the lake and its vicinity, such as the so-called healing zones and more. According to the legends, the lake has a double bottom. Soviet secret police sponsored expeditions of the 1920s. Borchenko apparently visited an underground cave under the lake. In 1998, Mikhail Dyomin led an expedition that discovered a ritual well, mysterious signs and writings. But they also found ruins of an ancient observatory. A 15-meter long groove is pointing at the sky. In 2001, a new expedition led by Dyomin and using radars discovered a hollow, huge cave on the lake's shore. The next year, they found more surprises, including panels made from rock by metallic tools. They were dating back to 8,000 years before the common year, 8,000 years BC. An article in the Russian newspaper Anomalia in 2005 revealed that the Nazi intelligence agents were at the lake too. The article was written by Igor Gusev. He claims that some tourists found Nazi insignia and warm clothing in a cave by the lake. Actually, there were pictures, I recall, in Russia at the time, photographs. Food products were actually hidden inside the clothes. Hitler was very much interested in conquering the Kola Peninsula. It is possible that Ahnenerbe organization, founded in 1935 with Hitler's blessing, and merged with the other two SS organizations years later, but I already mentioned about them. They were working most likely in the area. We still don't know enough. A lot of the information is classified. Some Nazi racial theory ideologues believe that the answer to this mystery of the Kola Peninsula and the ancient Aryan land was connected to the lost city of Atlantis. Now, their Atlantis was also the mythical land of Thule, lying between Greenland and Iceland, and according to some, in the Kola Peninsula. From the spring of 1940 until the autumn of 1944, Nazi Germany had their hands on the north, except with the exception of the Kola Peninsula. Nazis knew the strategic importance of the ice-free port of Murmansk and vast natural wealth of the Kola Peninsula. Most likely they also knew about paranormal phenomena. They had quite an extensive intelligence network in the Soviet Union, and they were helped by Stalin's purges, when many of the most capable intelligence people were destroyed, sent to concentration camps, or killed in the 1930s. Nazi prepared for the comprehensive attack on the Soviet Union, officially, their explanation to take the Kola Peninsula was because of the large nickel mines there. But the Soviets also knew the importance of their northern peninsula and defended it at all costs. The Lake of the Mountain Spirits is a mysterious, pristine, remote, and very hard to reach place. I hope it does remain all of the above until the time to unlock its secret comes, and until the Russian government completely protects it from tourists and other adventurers. Now, Diomin, the explorer, tried in vain to obtain the KGB and KVD documents about the Borchenko and his work. He was finally informed that Borchenko's files were burned in 1941 as the Germans approached Moscow. Apparently, this was done to preclude Nazi capture of strategically important files. A Siberian Russian researcher I knew was present at a lecture given by Diomin in 2001 and wrote down this information. He also heard Diomin say that state archives in the Russian Republic of Buryatia may contain interesting information about this subject, but according to a former KGB officer from the 9th Chief Directorate, whose name is Dmitry Fonaryov, Borchenkov's files were designated as secret and are kept in the National Archives. This information briefly was available in the Russian media. The 9th Chief Directorate of the KGB was the organization responsible for providing bodyguard services to the most important leaders and their families. And also they guarded the major Soviet government facilities, including nuclear weapons and stockpiles. It operated the secret Moscow VIP subway system and a secure government telephone system. Fonaryov's June 2008 interview was recorded by Dmitry Sokolov and published in a Russian newspaper. But let's go back to Tibet, because it's all interconnected. Apparently, the strange objects over Asian skies interested the Soviets back in the 1920s, or the British, who were also involved in the big game in Asia. And the Soviets, like Nazis, were interested in the mysterious Shambhala, a land allegedly located on the borders of Afghanistan, India, and Tibet. It's time to speak about the expedition. Borchenko was getting ready to head an expedition to Tibet to search for the famed Shambhala, to discover the keys to mysteries of the world. He discussed his plans with Tibetan monks and a communist Mongolian official, and then Borchenko was paid another visit by Yakov Blumkin, a dedicated KGB officer, moving up the career ladder. It did not at all hinder Blumkin's career that he murdered a German diplomat in 1918. On the contrary, the KGB of the period actually forgave him and embraced this eager person. Blumkin informed Borchenko that his telepathy experiments are necessary for the Soviet defense industry, and the secret police would sponsor him. The scientist was not against cooperating with the secret police and wrote a letter to its head, Felix Dzerzhinsky. Bokii was given the responsibility to research the idea of an expedition to Shambhala, and so the Soviet secret police chief and a scientist who delved into mysticism met again and became friends. Shambhala figured prominently in their conversations. A laboratory had been created and funded by the KGB for 12 years, until 1937, when Borchenko was arrested during Stalinist purges. The files of his interrogations have been preserved, and excerpts published in Russia some years ago. A special black room was equipped for Borchenko's research in the KGB building. Borchenko worked with shamans, mediums, and healers. Sometimes he lectured the KGB people. One of those who attended the lectures was Boris Stomenyakov, Deputy People's Commissar for Foreign Relations. He was responsible for China and Tibet. Chinese ufology and ancient history of UFO sightings have been of particular interest to the Soviet intelligence services, according to information that was leaked out to the media. A group of highly placed communist officials, together with Gleb, Bokii, and Borchenko, did something else. They formed a secret society that they named United Labor Brotherhood. It was a society of mystics whose aims were to discover ways to Shambhala and establish communications with this mysterious area. At the time, Borchenko openly promoted the idea of the creation of an international of secret societies to help the Soviet communists spread their influence. The Comintern leaders residing in the USSR welcomed this idea. The Communist International, abbreviated as Comintern, also known as the Third International, was the global communist organization initiated in Moscow in 1919 and used by the Soviet leaders for espionage and other similar projects. Gleb Bokii was eager to depart to Tibet to look for Shambhala, but his enemies in the KGB were able to sabotage his plans. Instead, Yakov Blumkin was sent to look for Shambhala under different guises. While in western China, Blumkin joined the Nikolai Roerich expedition and traveled the area under the Star-Spangled Banner. Few people know this, but the Roerich expedition was officially an American enterprise and funded from private sources in the United States. The search for Shambhala was not as important to the Soviets as it later was for German Nazis. No, the Soviets sought to diminish and destroy British influence in Tibet. It was a new big game, and the British intelligence was quite aware of it and had operatives in the area. Its officers were able to block Roerich's expedition and stop the Soviet move into Tibet. In 1926, as Roerich traveled in Tibet, his companions and the painter provided one of the first detailed UFO reports. On August 5, a gigantic oval object moved at great speed across the sky. It was shimmering because the sun reflected off it. Contemporary Russian researchers of the expedition have provided information to prove that this actually was a special Soviet aircraft mistaken for a UFO. If they are right, then the Soviets achieved incredible progress in the aircraft development for the time. Crossing the sky over the camp of the expedition, the object that was sighted changed its direction from south to southwest. The people below had time to study it through their field glasses. The camp, located in the Kukunor district, was not far away from the Humboldt chain, and it included well-trained mountain travelers and guides. The Soviet secret police asked Dr. Konstantin Ryabinin to join the expedition. He also observed the UFO in 1926. Again, some Russian researchers claim nowadays that it was a specially designed Soviet flying apparatus for espionage purposes. He was arrested in 1930, and his diaries, notes, and Tibetan documents were confiscated. Dr. Ryabinin refused to defame Roerich and spent years in Stalin's concentration camps, where he had saved many lives in his capacity as a doctor. The most valuable information and data about secret knowledge he obtained in Tibet are still reportedly in the KGB archives. Dr. Ryabinin died in 1956, when the subject of Tibetan medicine in Russia was still a taboo. Yakov Blumkin, the darling of the KGB, made a costly mistake. He was too arrogant, too sure about his powers. So Blumkin paid a secret visit to the exiled Soviet leader Trotsky during one of his missions after the Tibet debacle. Upon his return to the Soviet Union, Blumking was betrayed by his lover, arrested and executed. In 1991, the KGB entertained an idea of awarding him the Order of Hero of the Soviet Union for his past deeds. But then the Soviet Union itself ceased to exist. Gleb Bokii was arrested in 1937. Stalin did not forgive him his Bolshevik past and proximity to prominent Soviet leaders, many of them dead or executed during the purges. Apparently, Stalin wanted possession of Bokii's secret file containing compromising materials on Soviet leadership. Recall the organization that Bokii was in charge of. He could eavesdrop and obtain information on any of them. Now, we do not know whether the file actually existed. Bokii was executed along with other members of his brotherhood. His department was disbanded into other KGB entities. Stalin ruthlessly crushed any dissent and any potential adversary. He had very practical aims and direct means of achieving them. Mysticism was of no use to him. I already discussed Stalin's interest of UFOs. As everything else, it was a practical interest. Now, Bokii's and Borchenko's paranormal files were confiscated. Some Russian researchers believe that the FSB, the modern KGB, keeps them in their archives. And there are people apparently who agree with it. We already mentioned one of them who gave the, or at least who was recorded in 2008. If the files were destroyed, it would undoubtedly be a great loss, but there is still hope that they may exist intact somewhere in the archives of the KGB. Maybe gathering dust waiting for someone to chance upon them? Only time will tell. Thank you, and please subscribe and share.